para las naciones industriales.
So for our first panel, the moderator will be Ms. Tiahoga Ruga, the Regional Director of Mexico Earth Day Network. If we could invite you up on stage.
Y para este primer panel nos gustaría presentar y por favor démosle una gran bienvenida y un aplauso a, discúlpame, a la estimada
Please have a seat.
Tiahoga Ruge, discúlpame si es Ruge, que es nuestra queridísima directora regional de México del Earth Day Network. Bienvenida.
And we'd also like to welcome up our first keynote speaker,
También nos encantaría darle la bienvenida a nuestro primer orador,
Dr. Adrian Fernandez Bremautas, the CEO
el
of the
doctor
Climate
Adrián
Initiative of
Fernández
Mexico.
Bremauts, el CEO de la Iniciativa de Climas de México. Bienvenido, doctor.
And our second keynote speaker,
Y
Dr.
nuestro
Danilo
segundo orador, el doctor Danilo
Turk, former president of the Republic of Slovenia.
Su Gran Excelencia, el expresidente de la República de Eslovenia. Bienvenido, Su Excelencia.
And now we allow
Welcome,
Ms.
Your
Ruga.
Excellency.
We allow Ms. Ruga to now call up the panelists.
Y ahora, por favor, invitamos a los panelistas.
Bueno, buenos días. Good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are very fresh and enlightened to start the day. And yesterday we had the last panel was the visionary leadership in industrialized countries. This morning we have the visionary leadership in developing countries and economies in transition. And I would like to invite the panelists of this panel, which is Ms. Shaili Kedia, Fellow of the Energy and Resource Institute and board member of World Sustainable Development Forum. Please, Shaili. Then Joana Paulino Pereira, representing the Nobel Peace Prize laureate José Ramón Horta's office from East Timor, and Professor Mila Popovic, Chair of Nominations Committee of the World Academy of Art and Sciences. Welcome, Shaili.
Bienvenida, Shaili. Y la señora María Jaquia Valenzuela de Cambio Ibero, nuestra maravillosa líder de jóvenes en México.
Well, today this panel, I think, is really important because, as was said at the introduction, developing countries not necessarily have to follow the steps that developing countries have done as an example, because we have seen what has happened. And I want to start with some interesting numbers and then the leadership that we need in order to do what we have to do. Also, I want to add that being a leader in developing countries is not an easy task, as it is not in many other places, but it is a very, very difficult task in developing countries. It has been. Personally, I have started since I was a very young person, and I think most of the Mexican leadership in environmental issues is composed of persons who have started many, many years ago. And I think this World Sustainable Development Forum Summit is very important because we have integrated the youth. I feel so encouraged to see all these wonderful youth leaders from all over the world taking action, and very young leaders, 16-year-old leaders. And this is a fantastic moment, because I think that the experience of us is, we have now time to really give you the experience that we have accumulated all these years. And I think we feel proud also to have opened the road for you, so that you can now do the work. And now we know what we have to do. When we started, we were not sure what we had to do. But in these years, a lot of knowledge has been accumulated. We have numbers, and we know what to do. So I think basically we have to go to a transition in which each person is only going to, we all have to do 2 tons of emissions a year, and to do that we have to really change, and as developing countries we have to really take action and do this. But I'm not going to go further into this right now, because we have some fantastic keynote speakers that will set the stage, and then we will discuss this. As you can see, we have an interesting fact here. We have 2 men, very important environmental leaders, and then we have 5 women panelists. So I think this will be very interesting, a very interesting discussion actually. So I would like to ask our first keynote speaker to come up, Dr. Adrián Fernández Bermouns, who is the CEO of Climate Initiative of Mexico.
¿Qué tal? Muy buenos días a todas y todos. Voy a hablar en español y quisiera en primer lugar agradecer sinceramente a nuestros anfitriones, a todo el equipo del gobernador José Rojas Aispuro,
José Rojas Spuro, for this amazing reception, and with this welcoming that has made us feel at home since the moment we got here. Not everywhere where we have conferences we get to be treated as the way we have been treated here, and I would like to acknowledge this. I was tempted to make a joke about we needing some affirmative action as to balance gender, the gender of the components of this panel, but the truth is that what I would like to tell you is about a couple of ideas that have been linked from the very beginning in terms of what we were asked to share with you. What you see on the screen, at least what in my life, for me, this is the quote that describes what, I think it tells us a lot. Last night we were listening to the young leaders at their very own meeting, where we have the privilege to listen to them, to attend as adults. And there is no question about the fact that these young people who are with us, who are leaders, that's what they are here. Nobody made them come here. We have an amazing capital of leaders from Mexico and from other parts of the world in this conference. One of our colleagues who was with us last night was mentioning that at some point when she finished her studies, she got into watching a lot of videos and study a lot. And even if I sound like a grandpa, I'm going to say it. You have to study a lot, because you who are leaders, you will continue having a public presence. You will have to be very active, and you will have to convince others. And you are already equipped, maybe from birth, with something very important, which is your heart, your determination, and the fact that you care about the planet, you care about people, and you denounce any injustices. That's why you are here, because you have this very clear. Now, allow me to highlight this. In my opinion, you have the obligation to study a lot, not just in the sense as we were told by our parents when we were little, but to be experts on the topics that you are discussing. You will not be legitimate and nor credible if you only undertake to convince people with your engagement at heart. I invite you, and that's why I am showing this quote. Of course, many of us can identify with it, but we have no spiritual, no religious, even less religious component. But we have to acknowledge that human beings, because of their very nature, can be inspired by love. Love is the engine that moves the world. It's the drive that moves the world. Is what creates leadership in the world. And I am sure that many. And then the second part, love is the drive, but then knowledge is vital. Anytime I think of this phrase, I think of our beloved Apache, Dr. Pachauri. He is an example in his life of these things. First, he became a scientist, and then he was one of the people who contributed the most in such an important area when a good part of the world did not only not acknowledge the problem of climate change, but was against also fighting against this. Then Pacho was an example of life, and he continued moving forward with the tools that made him so strong. And these are science faced to all of the work of the last decade, of the last 15 to 20 years. Without a doubt, this was a formidable deployment of love. Love for his human being colleagues, for nature. And he devoted an important part of his life with no interest, with no personal interests at heart, as to share his knowledge and convince with example many others, always based on knowledge. I would like to conclude my short comment because I asked the moderator to allow me to start or to have two interventions. This first intervention, it's a call and invitation for the young people to continue with their drive inspired by love, but guided by knowledge. You cannot promote the fight against climate change and not know what you're talking about. Always, you have to always study, become experts of the things about which you are speaking. And at the end of the panel, I will be back to you, I hope, so we can all sing together. I'm going to leave this as a mystery, and I acknowledge the organizers, my dearest Shamali and Ash. It's a real privilege to be able to be up here on stage. Ahora me gustaría invitar a Su Excelencia el Dr. Danilo Turk, expresidente de la República de Eslovenia.
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to see so many people coming for the second day of the conference, so many young people radiating enthusiasm and commitment. And this is clearly a moment when one has to recall the historic experience and historic contribution made by late Rajendra Pachauri, who demonstrated to the world what it means to be an inspiring leader. Now, we live in a period of time when leadership is often not inspiring, but we have personalities who have demonstrated how that is done. And this is not unique, neither is it massive. We therefore have every reason to think about Rajendra Pachauri during our conference. Now, I was invited to speak about the visionary leadership, I believe, in economies in transition, since Slovenia is one of the countries which are sometimes called countries in transition. But then again, I have to emphasize that transition is actually our common destiny. We live in an era where 200 years of carbon-based development is coming to an end, and the new era is approaching. So we are all part of transition, and those transitions take place differently in different countries. I'll say a few words about Slovenia in a short while, but we have to proceed from the fact that transition is our destiny. As president, I realized that for young people this is not difficult to understand. Wherever I went, to people small as children to their maturity age, there was no problem in discussing the question of environmental issues, sustainability, global warming, climate change. They seem to be very familiar and very persuaded about the direction in which we need to go. So that is there. Persuasion is already there. And people like you have contributed already a lot to that situation in which we have to think clearly about what are our tasks, what is the policy that people who understand the importance of transition to post-carbon development, what are the priorities, what are the tasks that we have to support. Yesterday I listened very carefully to the whole discussion during the day, which gave quite a number of very good ideas, and I would like to recall the thoughts of Ricardo Lagos, former president of Chile, who spoke about the need, when measuring progress, to add emissions per capita as one of the measures. Now that in itself will not change anything, but will strengthen the awareness of where the progress is and how to go that direction. Then he spoke about the need of emphasizing policy and legislation as critically important ingredients in change and transition today, and importance of involving business in a very innovative sense. Later in the day, we heard two speakers from two different environments, Omar Ramirez from Dominican Republic and Mike Wren from South Australia, and they gave us a wonderful explanation of what does it take to be a policymaker in our era, starting with ambitious goals and being committed to those ambitious goals. That's a vital prerequisite. And then something very important. Mike Wren spoke about the need to define a set of measurable interim targets, have them legislated, and then implemented in a responsible manner. I insist, measurable interim targets. That's extremely important in our era. We do not have to think too much, I think, nowadays about persuading the general public. The general public is persuaded. What the general public expects from policymakers are precisely these sort of things: interim objectives, clear policy, responsible commitment to implementation, and of course responsibility in leadership. Now, this is something that I wanted to say by way of introduction to 2 points that I would like to make as the core of my presentation today. First, Slovenia is part of the European Union, and therefore European Union is the kind of policy framework within which the most important decisions are being made these days. As you know, European Union is committed to a long-term goal to 2050 to end up with zero net emissions. Right now, and this is very important, European Union is fully engaged in this interim phase, in defining the targets between now and 2030, the interim phase, the interim targets, and to legislate them. As we speak here in Durango, people in Brussels are discussing the questions of European climate law, which will put in specific legal obligations the interim commitments that are still not fully agreed to. So the European Union is finding itself in a very important moment right now. There are different views on what should be achieved in this period until 2030. Currently, the conservative estimates are 40% of greenhouse gas emissions is possible. Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, would like to have it at the level of 52%, and the environmental activists say 65% if we want to preserve the 1.5 degrees Celsius raise of temperature as an achievable objective. So you can see that there are still considerable differences as far as the definition of goals are concerned. And then, of course, there are also differences between countries. I'm coming from one of the countries in transition, but there are other countries in transition which have much more serious problems to resolve if they want to follow this path. Poland, a country which is very heavily dependent on coal, has some of that problem. Then even Germany, a country which is well developed, but still very dependent on the existing automobile industry, is very cautious about the objectives and costs and so forth. So it is not going to be easy. And the task is a complex one. The objectives have to be defined with the level of precision which will apply to all sectors of development, not only to industrial production, not only to energy production, but also to agriculture, to regional development, social policies, and practically everything else. So you can imagine the complexity, importance of these tasks. So now European Union is in the position of needing bold, visionary leadership, and we shall see whether the current Commission can have it. Now, I'm mentioning European Union in particular because many countries in most, perhaps all countries of European Union, vitally depend on the quality of their own decision-making on what happens at the level of European Union. We are no longer fully sovereign states, and that is why the experience of a unit like South Australia is important to us, because we don't have full sovereignty. There will be differences among different member states, but we have to make sure that the totality of the whole at the end is adequate. Now, a few words about Slovenia. You see, Slovenia is a relatively small country, well, absolutely small country, 2 million people. We don't have huge development challenges. We are placed according to the Human Development Index of the United Nations Development Program. HDI, as you know, is the most comprehensive development index. We currently occupy the position 24 on the global list, which is just after France and just before Spain. So it's not a bad position to be in, but not one where we can be complacent. And complacency is our problem. Slovenia never wanted to have shock therapies or any other big revolutionary short-term changes. We opted deliberately, when we became sovereign state in 1991, for gradualism, slow, gradual transformation. And that was good. That helped us. But on the other hand, this was not without a cost. And that cost included the fact that gradualism always breeds complacency and allows accumulation of problems. You don't deal with problems as they arise, but you somehow leave it for a later stage. This is what happens to us with the aging population. Right now we have a big problem of aging population because it has been delayed for very long. And we have a big problem with our energy balance, because that also was seen as not being terribly urgent, and somehow decisions were delayed. So we now have to deal with problems like this, and energy, of course, is a very central to the question of global warming, to sustainability of our development, and to ensuring that the targets, including the interim targets of the European Union, are going to be achieved. Now, this doesn't go without difficulties. When Slovenia's government proposed its first analytical paper for the purpose, it was rejected in Brussels. Not sufficiently ambitious, not sufficiently forward-looking. So last week, our government adopted a new document called Comprehensive Energy Climate Plan, which hopes to be acceptable given the whole of European Union. And it contains objectives which, in my opinion, are still not bold enough. We talk about the reduction of emissions at the level of 30%, and then 20% would go to the carbon trading. So it's a combination of carbon trading and net reduction of emissions, which is not very ambitious. Then reduction of the use of coal should be, between now and 2030, achieved at the level of 30%. And renewables should rise to 27%, which includes also water-generated electricity. Now here we have a big problem. Slovenia has good water potential and that is largely used and could be used a little more, but we have very little in terms of solar or wind power. So therefore we cannot expect big changes as a result of renewables. And here is a problem which I would like to give to you for your reflection further. We shall probably need nuclear energy in the intermediate period for the next decades. And the question of nuclear energy as an energy which is less harmful in some respects than carbon-based energy is something that needs to be discussed very directly and with an understanding of all dimensions. I have been somewhat surprised that I haven't heard much about nuclear energy so far in our conference, but I guess that in the future we have to have more. Since this is my last minute, I would like to say just a few concluding points. First, in Slovenia, we have to use less energy, we have to adjust our habits, we have to adjust our industrial development, perhaps producing less aluminum products, reduce the spending of electrical energy, and we probably will have to build nuclear power plant. In the European Union, we need to coordinate policies in all aspects, including agriculture and regional development, which seem to be further away from the immediate goals of reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, but then again, it's important for the overall balance of the situation. And at the global level, we have to understand that we are all in the same boat, in the boat of transition, and that we have to come quickly to solutions that would include large-scale policy interventions, new regulation, not only at the level of states or regions, but also global, and new investment of funding in research and solutions that people like you are going to propose. We totally depend on the work of the younger generations, and that is why I'm so happy to see so many young faces in this conference room. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Danilo Turk, for your very, very interesting keynote speak about Slovenia. And it certainly is a beautiful country in transition, and I think we have two very important messages from Dr. Danilo Turk, the message that we are all in transition, and we certainly are, whether we are in developed or not developed or in transition countries. We do have to change, all of us, all countries, and all persons and all institutions. So we are really in an era of change, and we have to change fast. And as Dr. Adrián Fernández said, we need to change, but with knowledge. We need knowledge, we need to study, we have to know what we are talking about. And the fortunate thing at this moment in time is that we do have the science, we do have the knowledge, and we do have the technology. Never ever before in humanity have we had so much knowledge, so much science, and so much technology, and so much will and consciousness and education. Because for many years, so many people have worked on this, and the stage is set for a new generation of leaders to come up and to change the world and to make a more sustainable planet that can survive the crisis of climate change. And as I said before, we have now 4 very powerful women here from different countries that are leaders in transition countries. And I would like to ask Mrs. Shaili Kedia, who is the fellow of the Energy and Resources Institute, TERI, in Delhi, and is also a board member of World Sustainable Development Forum, to give us her opinion of what it takes, what do we need, what is India doing in this leadership?
Good morning to all of you, and thank you for being present. My intervention is going to be based on two countries, developing countries, China and India. I mean, how can we talk about climate change without having both these large, without really discussing both these large countries? So, China and India China consumes 23% of the world's primary energy, and India consumes about 5%. And certainly we know for India, this is going to rise. And this has to rise in a manner which ensures energy access to its population, as well as clean energy, so that climate change mitigation is also addressed. What we have seen in the recent times, in the recent decade, that China and India has seen a double-digit growth in CAGR terms for renewables, which is much higher than OECD countries. And the two countries are taking initiatives to tackle and address climate change. China and India, they both had their national climate change policies in 2007-8, and this was the time where most of you present here knew was the time when climate change was really at its, was at its forefront in terms of being an issue for concern for policymakers. And of course, Dr. R.K. Pachauri had a key role to elevating this issue at that stage. So in terms of finance, China has taken support from both regulatory as well as market instruments. Of course, in China, regulation is much more easy to enforce. So for example, China Banking Regulatory Commission has a policy related to green credits, which is to encourage investments in more green sectors. And in terms of market instruments, it also has domestic trading markets, which has been established in a few provinces and cities. Then we see a lot of science technology demonstration initiatives in China as well. For example, 10 cities, 100 vehicles, 1,000 vehicles, that was for electric vehicles. 10 cities, 10,000 lamps for LEDs and golden sun for photovoltaics. So there are technology demonstration projects in China, and of course this needs to be upscaled, not just for mitigation, but also for climate change adaptation. Then in terms of engagement with subnational level, China already has low carbon pilots and low carbon pilots for both province and cities. In India, in terms of the market instruments, we have the renewable energy certificates, which is traded at the Power Exchange India Limited. And in terms of incentivizing states, the subnational or the, which is provinces in some countries, and even the third tier of government, municipalities, India has based its revenue sharing based on performance in terms of forests, renewables, as well as waste management. Then India also has put in place in the Bombay Stock Exchange the GreenX and CarbonX. Of course, while these instruments and this information is out there, the key challenge will be whether investors will actually invest in companies that are performing good in these indices on the stock exchange. So that will certainly be one area to watch out for and for policymakers to push for. Then, of course, given that there is a large micro, small, and medium enterprise sector in India, and of course, the same is true for other large developing countries, there are many financial schemes that incentivize energy efficiency and resource efficiency in MSMEs. Then there are risk management instruments, such as the Partial Risk Guarantee Fund, that takes risks for MSMEs as well as enterprises that want to invest in energy efficiency. And also, since adaptation, climate change adaptation is crucial, India has a National Adaptation Fund. The research in India is still what I feel needs much more push, and this may be the case, and it has already been emphasized by our previous panelists, that there is need for more knowledge. So also in terms of youth advocacy, this is one point for even youth, that they can ask their government to invest more in research in all disciplines, in science, in applied sciences, in social sciences. So that's that's one area I think it still needs a lot of strengthening in developing countries. The more encouraging news is actually initiatives, for example, in India, taken by the state governments. Recently, as a part of one of our projects, we are working with the state government of Bihar and actually working with the finance department there. Because now it's also time, not just for the environment departments, but for the finance departments to come on board. Because once they come on board, that's when other ministries really fall into place, and we are actually working with them to design a process for green budgeting, wherein every department has to prepare a green budget separately. So, this of course is a topic for the next session, but there is a lot of encouraging news coming from the subnational levels, where governments are really, really innovating, and not just the environment departments, environment ministries, but also the finance departments. And I think that is the other areas where youth need to really come forward and, put a pressure group on the finance. And so that's what I would like to leave you all with, and thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. That was fantastic to learn what China and India are doing. And now we have, who knows where East Timor is? ¿Quién sabe a dónde está Timor? East Timor. A ver, levanten su mano. Bueno, es un país muy especial. Y tenemos aquí a Joana Paulino Pereira, que representa a su excelencia el doctor José Ramos Horta, que ganó el premio Nobel. And please, Joana Paulino Pereira, I would like to come and please tell us where
Por
East
favor,
Timor
Joana,
is.
dinos dónde está Timor del Este.
Well, good morning all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. So East Timor is between Indonesia and Australia, and it's a small island, one of the youngest, and it has been independent since 2002 and is working on its development and considered as the good students from the UN, so we're very proud of it. On behalf of His Excellency Nobel Peace Prize laureate José Ramos Horta and myself, I would like to thank the organization for all the work in setting up this important forum, especially to Dr. Ash Pachauri for the excellent job he's been doing. As we have been talking these days, the planet is literally burning. Air pollution is killing millions of people. Flooding and erosion are assaulting coastal areas, destroying infrastructure or rendering them more vulnerable. We are losing essential to our survival ecological services, clean air, water and foods that nature has so far provided freely. Studies show that the effects of climate change will not be uniformly distributed across the globe, and there are likely to be winners and losers as the planet warms. Applying a broad brush to climate effects, developing countries are more likely to disproportionately experience the negative effects of global warming. Not only do many developing countries have naturally warmer climates than those in developed worlds, they also rely more heavily on climate-sensitive sectors such as agriculture, forestry, and tourism. As temperatures rise further, regions such as Africa will face declining crop yields and will struggle to produce sufficient food for domestic consumption, while their major exports will likely fall in volume. This effect will be made worse for these regions if developed countries are able to offset the fall in agriculture outputs with new sources potentially from their own domestic economies as their land becomes more suitable for growing crops. Developing countries may also be less likely to create drought-resistant harvests given the lack of research funding. The increased frequency and severity of extreme weather will weigh on government budgets. The aftermath of natural disasters often falls on authorities who are forced to spend vast amounts on clear-up operations and healthcare costs that come with experiencing extreme weather. According to the IMF, revenue reductions may also be experienced by countries heavily dependent on tourism or on selling fishing rights, for example. The effects on the developing world are twofold. Firstly, as developed countries face an increasing strain on domestic budgets, fewer resources in the form of aid and economic development funds will flow to developing countries. Secondly, the governments of these nations will be forced to channel resources away from productive and growth-enhancing projects towards countering the costs of extreme weather. Such effects will damage near-term growth prospects. Furthermore, developing countries are likely to have less capacity to rebuild. The time required to recover from natural disasters will be prolonged, and if longer than the frequency in which such disasters occur. Many developing economies could remain in a constant state of reconstruction. We can already note unprecedented climate impacts that are disproportionately burdening developing countries. Moreover, the phenomenon's negative effect on quantity and quality of freshwater resources in this nation is becoming ever more apparent. Addressing these challenges, most governments of developing countries are developing climate policies, strategies, and making promises to reduce greenhouse emissions. However, most probably those countries will fail to succeed in their climate efforts without partnership assistance, capacity building, technology transfer, and financial support. One of the examples that I would like to bring to this forum is a memorandum signed between Timor-Leste and Australia to establish a non-profit called Respect that will run the plastic recycling plant expected to launch by the end of 2020. In a region where seas are awash with trash, Timor-Leste is set to become the world's first country to recycle all its plastic waste after it teamed up with Australian researchers to build a revolutionary recycling plant. The $40 million US dollars plant will ensure that no plastic used in the Southeast Asian nation would become waste, but would instead be turned into new products. Another focus should also be given on the essential need for countries to draw up the wisdom of indigenous people, whose teachings offer the insights we need to live with nature in a sustainable way. Approximately a quarter of the world's usable land are under the guardianship of indigenous people.
You have 1 minute.
Nevertheless, developing countries are not the only ones affected by climate change. Our economic system, reliant on ever more polluting unconventional sources of energy, is evidently out of sync with the planet we inhabit and the shared values that united us. Remaining in denial is costing us greatly. Fear is a normal human reaction to this worrisome state of affairs and to the urgency with which we need to change. We can't be controlled by fear, deny the reality we now live in. Inequality of income is also growing despite political promises to the contrary, further fueling cynicism and distrust in politicians and democratic institutions. Indeed, we have seen the rise of populist demagogues everywhere preying on our worst human instincts to gain power by fueling division and hate. This is hardly creating a society in which anyone would want to live in. Avoiding catastrophic climate change, resource depletion, and global economic meltdown is possible, but it will require a transition of extraordinary scope, depth, and speed. Such a collective endeavor requires each person to do their parts if it is to be succeeded, starting with educating oneself about the issues and voting accordingly. And I believe this doesn't only have to come from governments. It is often said that the sports sector is in a unique position to influence sustainable behaviors among its customers, meaning the fans. I read that the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Secretariat is working with other sports sectors and sustainability experts to discuss the parameters of a climate action agreement specific to the sports sector. The affinity opens a powerful and influential line of trust and communication between a sports team and a fan. Each sport entity is in a position to make a sustainable part of the fabric of the organization to the point where sustainability is the organizational norm and an expected behavior among employees, participants, fans, and all stakeholders. Climate change calls for a collective effort from governments, firms, shareholders, and individuals to both adapt and implement measures to mitigate its effects. We can have a better life for all, a path of economic justice, indigenous empowerment, and integral technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joanna. This was very interesting. And now let me ask all of you, where is East Timor? Do you know? ¿Quién sabe a dónde está Timor? A ver, todos levanten la mano. A ver, ¿a dónde es? A ver, East Timor es una isla muy importante en la que precisamente la persona que ganó el Premio Nobel de la Paz fue el José Ramos Horta. Joana trabaja en su oficina y ganó el Premio Nobel de la Paz porque lograron hacer la paz en Timor, porque había muchos problemas y Timor está muy cerca de Australia y por eso tienen este proyecto tan importante de reciclaje de plásticos. Pero es una isla que está amenazada, obviamente, con el cambio climático, porque si sube el nivel del mar, pues Timor va a tener muchos problemas, puede desaparecer en algún momento. Bueno, como ven, ya aprendimos de Eslovenia, ya aprendimos de India, de China, de la isla de East Timor, y ahora I would like to invite Professor Mila Popovic, who is the chair of Nominations Committee of the World Academy of Art and Sciences, but also she comes from Montenegro. A ver, una pregunta. Nuestra siguiente ponente es de Montenegro. ¿Quién sabe a dónde está Montenegro? Bueno, Montenegro es un pequeño país cerca de Eslovenia, en los Balcanes, pero tenemos aquí a la profesora que nos va a explicar.
I was at a high-level meeting at an organization that is really a leader on the question of climate change. And speaking to no less than a co-president of that exclusive organization, I was saying, we got an invitation to go to Kazakhstan and to really sit down with the government representatives and communities and talk about these issues. He turned around and he said, how does one even get to Kazakhstan? In that moment, I was left with a disheartening feeling, a bitter taste of realization that even for these leaders, there seemed to be unimportant, too distant regions in the world. And at the same time, I realized that by gesture like that, that very same leader cut himself off from resources, people power, and ways of knowing to go forward. Because we're not going anywhere unless we all go together. And not only cut himself off and his leadership, but even the possibilities and resources for his own organization. I come from the other Europe, from the bastard children of European history. Even though culturally we're very ancient people and outlived culturally the Western Europe, we have always been the othered Europe, Southeast Europe specifically. And I come from a very small country. There's only in the country about 700,000 of us. In the suburb of America where I currently reside, that's pretty much the suburb of a big city or Mexico City. There's about 1 million of us outside of the country, and the country that I describe as a lotus of its own, a beautiful, beautiful country with tremendous people, power, and natural resources, right? But it has deep, deep, muddy historical roots. And where I'm going with this story about some of these destinations that we do not know enough about is that in this world that we live in, there are no inconsequential destinations. There are no inconsequential destinations and inconsequential perspectives and experiences and knowledge. Because only in terms of epidemic or any kind of disaster, migrations or anything like that, that certainly reminds us that we all matter, especially at the times of trouble. So Montenegro is a really interesting country because we experienced a civil war, again, very unusual. Imagine a civil war where you have 4 warring sides, everybody against everybody else. And in the times of that, coming from a kind of warriors, highlanders culture, for the first time Montenegro said, no. There is no foreign invader. There is no oppressor against whom we can clearly say enough. For the first time in our history, freedom-fighting history, we said no. And ended up taking in refugees from all sides. At one point, the pressure on the local population was so tremendous because 12% of the population were refugees from all sides, and we took everybody in at the times of tremendous struggle. 1989 is when the Berlin Wall fell, and we ended up being sort of the sacrificial lamb to the reordering of the world, because we are a strategic point between the East and West, and we certainly are a prized piece of real estate, like I said, really good resources. What happened, yet another fascinating fact, speaking of no inconsequential learning and experiences and perspectives, already in the heat of civil wars, 1991, Montenegro, in the middle of it, declared itself the first ecological state in the world. We have a long way to go. But there is a point of reference, just like the very first one that climbs Himalaya and puts that little flag up there. We can't deny anymore that there is a point of reference, that somebody has gone there. And in that process, setting that new standard, a new point of collective reference, Montenegro decided to set a different course to its own development. Honoring His Excellency's Turk comment that we're all in transition, our transitions have been extended by continual econo-political repackaging of the country. And in that process, there is so much to be learned. So what I'm calling for today is a new process of social learning, new process of collaborative learning, and coming to places and forums like this where there is a representation of this kind, where there is a co-sharing of experiences, because we will have to devise new ways. Some of the people that have realized what it takes to really take our collective forward, such as Mohamed Yunus, was the one who got a Nobel Prize because he understood that we need to be learning from village ways, as we were mentioning before. So my invitation today, as there are many examples of countries like this that have done a remarkable, remarkable job, such as Bhutan, tiny places, remarkable social experiments and social accomplishments, such as Bhutan, such as Costa Rica, and many other places. My call to you is to be mindful and to be a different kind of leader, inclusive, highly aware of the richness and the diversity of knowledge, and unifying that knowledge for collective action for change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mila. That was absolutely wonderful. Bueno, pues tenemos ya ejemplos de liderazgo en países muy grandes, enormes, como India, China, países más pequeños como Eslovenia, Montenegro y East Timor. Y quisiera ahora invitar
Now I'd like to invite
una líder,
one
una joven
leader,
líder de México,
one
que es
young
María
Mexican leader, Maria Jacques Valenzuela from Cambio Ibero. Welcome, Maria. Please tell us, what is required in Mexico to become a leader? Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that everything that Adrian said caught my attention. It is necessary to have knowledge and heart to carry out our projects. I've realized that young people have that heart and that will to act in doing things, in going there without even knowing how things work. On the other side, adults always want to understand, learn, and know how things are to act next. But what we need is a mixture of both things. So I think that's a very important point that we should take away with us. And that's why we are here in this table. We have young people, people from different generations. To be able to do that exchange. And I also would like to say that the most important SDG is the quality education goal, because it is linked to knowledge, because it is through knowledge that we will achieve all of the other SDGs, like peace, alliance, and the end of poverty. So I would like to invite you to use this forum to generate the synergies, these exchanges. So something that seems to be really funny is that people is waiting for others to do things so that they will do them next. So in this panel, when she started in the sustainability world, everybody said, hey, why are you doing that? What is that? That's so weird. But right now, young leaders are so lucky. Just check out at the amount of people that we have today. It is a movement that is getting stronger and stronger. So we should use that to keep going forward and faster. So I think that humankind's problem is that we're always waiting for others to do those things to be able to do them next. So I think that all of the countries, all of the individuals need to use our time to do that. So inside this topic, we will say, okay, if the other country is not doing that, they're going to have a bigger economic growth. So that's why I'm not going to do it. So I think those actions have to begin from ourselves, and you need to do 100% as one person, regardless of what they're doing. So I'd like to mention two countries that really caught my attention. I consider those countries like models to follow. Bhutan absorbs 3 times more CO2 than the emissions they have, so they are carbon negative. And for 2023, it's a country that will be a developed country. What are they doing correctly? And this is really interesting for me. They're also considering the national happiness index. They're not just looking at the economy. They consider their people's well-being, their happiness, the surroundings is something so complex that needs to be integrated in a holistical way. For Mexico, a good example could be India in the sense of solar energy. What can we learn from India regarding sun power and policies? Because in Mexico we have a big solar power potential, but if we don't foster policies, we'll never reach that potential. So I'd like to highlight the importance of choosing our leaders correctly, because a leader is going to make the decisions. Our president and every country's presidents are the ones who will make decisions. So it's our responsibility to choose correctly those leaders. For example, Brazil or Mexico. What is going on here? This is the consequence of choosing those leaders. So I would like to close with just one word, that is together, because together we can change the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you for your leadership. And thank you to all the young people here for your leadership. Also, the big professors of ours, Dr. Salokan, has just got here. Welcome. He has been everyone's teacher. He is from one generation, we are from the next one, and you, young people, are from the next one that will be following us. You will have us as your teachers. And to close, I would like to thank everyone, all of you. I think we could continue talking about this topic so passionate about your lives. The fact that you are here means that behind there is an endeavor and a work of many years, so we can get to this knowledge that we get to share now. And to close, we've got a surprise prepared by Dr. Adrian Fernandez. I warned you that I was going, I threatened you about my intervention. That's why I only used 2 or 3. And this event has to be a huge celebration of life, of the work of Dr. Pachauri. The fact that you are here today, not just many young people, but many personalities who have traveled to the world to be here today, they are here because of him. And hola, Dr. Jose Sarugan, who has just got here. He is a very busy person, as all of the personalities who have been here. We're here to pay an homage to our dear Dr. Pachauri Patri. I will allow myself to do 2 things. I want to share something with you, an intimate thing, because you also love Patri a lot, and I'm using the present tense here. And this is part of a song, and I will invite you all to sing. I do not sing, but you will sing it. I was, at one of those occasions where I had the huge honor to be with Patri. Actually, it was lunchtime and we were close to home, and I told him, let's go home. I think there is something to eat. So we went home, we ate at the kitchen, not even at the dining room. In the kitchen, there is a small table we called, like a dining table. We took breakfast, something quite surely simple. But at the end of our meal, before going to the next meeting, because like you, Dr. Pachari also had me running all the time around the city, meeting a lot of people and doing things that were worth doing. Of course, we could not tell him no, so there we were with him. And at the end of our meal, I told him, hey, Patri, what kind of music do you like? And then we took the computer out, and he told me, well, for instance, maybe I'm sure it's not his only song, but it's a song that for him meant a lot. And when I want to remember him, I'm going to have it. And you know, it's a ballad song. I must admit that I did not know it when he showed it. But it's only two paragraphs. I'm going to ask you. I mean, you're going to sing. To imagine that you are singing with Patchy, his favorite song. If we can have on the lateral screens the video, you know, the having the lyrics and the music to see how it works. We can have a couple of minutes here. I hope you will sing because you can imagine you are singing with Patchy, a song that speaks a lot about his life, traveling around to the world, making friends, adding effort, and we can conclude the session with that. Let's see if we can have on the lateral screens, you know, the typical video with the lyrics so people can sing. And let's test the volume. This is a song by Al Martino called Come to Share the Wine. Las calles estaban oscuras y la noche estaba fría y seguía caminando solo. Vi las luces de un lugar acogedor con linternas todas encendidas. Alguien gritó, no esperes afuera, ven y saluda.
When I was young, and from the jukebox I heard the sounds I needed to recall. I sang along with every song, I knew them all. Come share the wine, no one is a stranger here, they're your friends and mine. Everyone's your brother, we're a long way from home, and we need each other, have no fear. You're welcome here. Come share the wine, it's a nice and warm in here, we're happy and kind. We can understand that you're a long way from home, but we have each other, have no
Muchas gracias. Esto es por
fear.
Patchy.
Like it here.
Bueno, thank you. Muchas gracias a todos por recordar a Patchy, por estar juntos, por tener amistad, por tener amor, por
We're
tener
having
pasión
friendship,
y
love, and passion
conocimiento,
and
que
knowledge.
seguramente
Quite surely,
hará que cada uno de
this will
ustedes
make that each one of you has a leadership in their hearts, love, and knowledge as to change the world. Thank you very much.
Los perils de los niveles del mar y la polución del océano.
SDG 14 focuses on life below water. The oceans of the world are facing a serious threat not only from sea level rise due to melting of ice and on land and in the Arctic ice cover, thermal expansion of the ocean, and the rapid increase in ocean pollution from human activities, including plastic waste.
El ODS 1A se centra en la vida bajo el agua. Los océanos del mundo mundial se enfrentan a una seria amenaza, no solo del aumento del nivel del mar, debido a la fusión de cómo se está derritiendo el hielo en la Tierra y en la capa del hielo ártico, pero también de la expansión termal del océano y también del incremento rápido en la polución del océano de actividades humanas, incluyendo también el residuo de plásticos.
The session will focus on the nature of the problem and
Esta sesión
solutions
también se enfoca en el problema de la naturaleza
by which human society has to
para
implement rapid
a través
changes.
de la sociedad de los humanos y las soluciones en cómo se pueden implementar estos cambios rápidos.
First, let's please welcome to the stage His Excellency Dr. Lawrence Gonzai, the former Prime Minister of Malta.
Y primero nos encantaría darle una gran bienvenida a su gran excelencia, el ex primer ministro de Malta, a el doctor Lawrence Gonzai. Bienvenido.
And also we'd like to welcome up His Excellency Dr. José Ramos Horta, former president of East Timor and the Nobel Peace Prize winner of 1996.
También tenemos a nuestro primer orador, a su gran excelencia, el doctor José Ramos Horta, también expresidente del Este Timor y un premio ganador de Nobel de 1996.
Sorry, Dr. Lawrence will actually be, or Dr. Jose will actually be calling in by video. I'm so sorry. Dr. Jose will be calling in by video.
Oh, sí, qué pena. Lo tenemos es por video.
And next, can you please welcome to the stage His Excellency Mr. Yukio Hatoyama, former Prime Minister of Japan.
Y ahora, con gran orgullo, démosle la bienvenida a su gran excelencia, Mr. Yukio Hatoyama, el ex primer ministro de Japón.
And now I want to welcome up our first panelist, Dr. Arturo Garcia, the Director of Pollutants, Substances, Residues, and Biosafety Research at the National Institute of Ecology and Climate Change from Mexico.
Ahora le damos la gran bienvenida al doctor Arturo Gavilán García, director de todas las sustancias, residuos y seguridad de investigación del Instituto Nacional de Ecología y Cambios Climáticos de México. Bienvenido.
Next, I'd like to welcome to our panel Dr. Norma Patricia Muñoz Sevilla, Chairperson of the Climate Change Council for the Presidency of the Mexican Republic.
Ahora démosle la gran bienvenida a nuestra adorada doctora Norma Patricia Muñoz Sevilla, Chairperson de la Presidencia de la República de México, encargada del cambio de clima, del cónsul para la Presidencia de la República Mexicana. Bienvenida nuestra querida doctora Norma.
Our next panelist is José Saracujan, the researcher at Emeritus National Autonomous University of Mexico.
Y ahora le damos la gran bienvenida al doctor José Sarucán, de Investigación Emeritus de la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. Bienvenido, doctor.
Next, please welcome to the stage Ms. Marisa Lopez, the founder of Bluer Future with an MA in Marine Conservation and Education.
Y ahora le damos la bienvenida a la estimada señora Marisa López, fundadora de Blue Future, del Futuro Azul, MA, Conservación Marina y Educación. Bienvenida, welcome.
And our final panelist that I would like to welcome to the stage is Mr. Carter Rise, the president of One More Generation.
Y por último, le damos una gran bienvenida y un fuerte aplauso. Creo que ya lo han visto, lo han conocido. I think you've seen him and you've met him. El señor Carter Rees, presidente de una organización que se llama OMG, que se pronuncia One More Generation. Bienvenido, Mr. Rees.
Okay, and that is all of our panelists for this panel. And with that, I'd like to welcome up the chair of this panel, Dr. Lawrence Ganzai, the former Prime Minister of Malta, to come speak.
Y esos son todos los panelistas que nos van a acompañar el día de hoy. Y ya por último, nos encantaría que por favor el doctor nos acompañara aquí para que empezáramos el panel. So, por favor, nos siga. Y damos el recordatorio, we'll give the reminder again. We have our two facilitators up here up front for the panelists. Tenemos las dos bellas damas acá al frente que nos están colaborando with the time cards. You have 6 minutes and you will be announced whenever you have 1 minute left to please pay attention. And again, if we do have to stop you, please don't take that in any rude way. Si les avisamos ya cuando queda 1 minuto para que continuemos en horario con la agenda. Thank you.
Okay, good morning everybody. It's a pleasure to be
Buenos
here.
días a todos, es un placer estar aquí y gracias por invitarme una vez más.
In this forum, I say once again because I was present as well two years ago when the first forum was held. And it is in that context that I want to join all my previous colleagues who saluted Dr. Pachauri. He became a close friend of mine over the past 2 years, and my admiration for him and for what he has done in order to raise awareness across the globe on the enormous challenges that we face today and the responsibility that we have to take care of our globe, of our planet, that enormous effort he has put into making this experience move forward needs to be recognized. And I want to join everybody in saluting Dr. Pachauri and at the same time remembering him and promising him that what he passed on to us, we will continue to emphasize and push forward in the future. Thank you, Ash, and all the Pachauri family for bringing forward this memory and for continuing his very valuable work. Now, as I have been introduced, I was Prime Minister of an island, Malta, for a period of 9 years between 2004 and 2013. Now, in the previous panel, there was somebody who asked you about East Timor. Where is East Timor? Well, I can ask you, do you know where Malta is? Oh, yes, okay. I'm glad that I've seen some hands coming up. Malta is an island in the Mediterranean between Italy on the north and Libya on the south. So we are at the very
Ladies and gentlemen
of the Mediterranean in a very strategic position. It is a small island of 316 square kilometers, a population of 500,000. A member of the European Union as well, like Slovenia, that was introduced to you by my good friend Danilo Turk, a member of the European Union. So even though I was Prime Minister of 500,000 people, I was sitting around a table with the Chancellor of Germany, with the President of Poland, with the Prime Ministers of all the European Union. And my voice there was heard. But as a Prime Minister of an island, surrounded by the sea, it was very important for me, and it still is even today, to emphasize how important it is for our survival and for the survival of the planet to take care of the sea around us. Now, I don't know whether any of you this morning was listening to BBC. You know what one of the items that BBC were mentioning this morning? They were mentioning that scientists have discovered a small shrimp in the deepest part of the ocean, in the Mariana Trench. And this is a new species. They they discovered it now. Do you know what they called it? Plasticus. Because this shrimp in the deepest part of the ocean was found with plastic granules in it. And they called it Plasticus. Now, that scares me, because it once again proves that we are absolutely irresponsible in the way all this plastic and trash is being thrown into our oceans and ruining a source of living of millions of people. My island, a small island, we don't have water. We generate water by transforming seawater into drinking water. And by doing so, we can get tourists to the island, we can have manufacturing, we can live a good life. But if the water around us, the seawater around us, is ruined, then our livelihood disappears immediately. Apart from the second challenge, which I am sure the panel will also address, the issue of sea level and rising sea level. My island is small, with 500,000 people. We have one of the highest population density in the world. If sea levels go up by 0.5 meter, 10 to 15% of the land of my country will suddenly disappear. Again, this is the responsibility that all of us are shouldering. We come here in Durango to try and discuss all of this, but also to generate a sense of urgency. We need to do something about this. And perhaps the only point I wish to make to you, and I will stop my introduction to you here, is that I notice that there is no sense of urgency. Danilo Turk mentioned a sort of sense of complacency. So we meet, we discuss, we realize what a terrible situation this is, but there is no sense of urgency. We need to do something about this, and we need to do it quickly. I am impressed by the reaction of the whole world on the coronavirus crisis. This topic is now, if you follow the news, it's all over the world. And action is being taken. Schools are closed. Countries are being closed. Traveling is stopped. Bookings are being canceled. Stocks and shares are suddenly down. All the world is in a crisis because there is a virus. Why can't we generate this sense of urgency also if we have the whole planet that is in danger? I hope that the forum here in Durango and the contribution of the panel will help us generate this sense of urgency. Thank you very much.
And next, by video, we're going to have His Excellency Dr. José Ramos Horta, the former president of East Timor and Nobel Peace Prize winner of 1996.
Y próximamente, por video, vamos a tener a el doctor, qué pena, un momento, gracias. Próximamente por video vamos a tener a el doctor José Ramos Horta, expresidente de East Timor y un ganador del Premio Nobel de 1996. Entonces ahora, si por favor nos pueden colaborar poniendo el video.
Ladies and gentlemen, my sincere apologies for not being able to join the much esteemed participants in this year's World Sustainable Development Forum held in Mexico in the city of Durango. Held in very sad times as Dr. Pachauri departed in this journey with no return. To the bereaved family, friends and colleagues, I again extend my heartfelt condolences. Our community has lost a global leading voice on climate change. But the fight must go on for humanity. One very brief snapshot about Timor-Leste, where I'm speaking to you from right now. Recent studies carried out by Conservation International concluded that the waters of Timor-Leste hold the richest biodiversity in the world. We are part of the Coral Triangle, the largest coral system in the world, comprising Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Malaysia, and the Philippines, and of course Timor-Leste. We in Timor-Leste deeply cherish our extremely rich and very fragile marine biodiversity and are very concerned about industrial, chemical, and commercial waste like plastic that are dumped by vessels that cross our seas on the way to and from Jakarta, Singapore, Japan. The need to manage emerging risks is as important as ever, alongside major technological, demographic, and political shifts. Our world is changing. Shifts in our climate bring potential profound implications for everyone and for the economy, as well as a real impact on sea level rise and ocean pollution. Scientists say that the two major causes for the global sea level rise are oceans thermal expansion, which occurs when water expands as it warms up, and the loss of land and sea-based ice, such as polar ice caps and glaciers, due to the melting increase caused by global warming. Global sea level rose around 17 centimeters in the last century. The rate in the last decade, however, has nearly doubled, and NASA scientists predict it could rise much more during this century if global warming is not addressed. Timor-Leste is a member of small island developing states, which is home to a combined population of more than 60 million people. We play a crucial role in protecting our oceans, but we are contributing little to climate change. Our total CO2 emission is less than 1% of global greenhouse gases. However, our people suffer disproportionately from the effects of climate change. Research shows that in the next century, global warming could lead to a sea level rise that could make many of these island states, especially in the Pacific region, uninhabitable. With 70% of the world's population living on low-lying coastal plains, and with 60% of the 39 largest metropolitan areas with a population of over 5 million, including 12 of the 16 populations exceeding 10 million, located within 100 kilometers of the coast, sea level rise is a global problem that affects far more than just small island nations. Sea levels, which are now rising 60% faster than previously estimated, could rise to unimaginable levels, and if we continue our current carbon emission path. As a result of these risks, many coastal cities are already planning adaptation measures to cope with the long-term prospect of higher sea levels, often at considerable cost. Building seawalls, rethinking roads, and planting mangroves or other vegetation to absorb water are all being undertaken. In addition to the sea level rise, the oceans are becoming more acidic, and this will affect marine life. Scientists say that the chalk-producing calcifying organisms are introducing chalk into these increasingly acidic conditions, and it is dissolving. This chalk produced by these organisms traps and stores carbon. So when increasing acidification decreases the amount of calcium carbonate, it decreases the ocean's ability to store carbon. In this kind of environment, shellfish cannot produce thick enough shells. By 2009, the Pacific oyster industry was reporting 80% mortality for oyster larvae due to the corrosive nature of the water. In addition to food security issues, increasing acidification will also cause coral reefs to be degraded, which will affect tourism, coastal protection, and heritage values of coastal regions. From the tiny plankton responsible for half of all the oxygen we breathe, to the beautiful coral reefs protecting our shorelines, to the whales, to the seafood, immense swaths of the ocean creatures are being threatened by rapid and non-discriminating forces. Oceans may seem vast and endless, but human activity is impacting every part of our waters and putting the health of the oceans in jeopardy. An incredible 80% of all the life on Earth lives beneath the waves, as this vital, vast blue wall pulses around the planet, driving the natural forces which sustain life on Earth. ocean acidification, coral bleaching, pollution, habitat loss, destructive fishing practices, overfishing, and climate change are all contributing to this catastrophic loss of life and ecosystem services that will change the oceans as we know them forever. In short, man's multiple use of the oceans has given rise to an acute problem of marine pollution, necessitating its management. The management of marine pollution must aim at the wise handling of the enormous potentialities of the oceans, which may warrant devising regulations for the optimal uses of the oceans. It is then clear that marine pollution is a global problem in several aspects. It affects oceans' health in all parts of the world. It affects all countries, both developed and developing, and all countries contribute to some aspect of the problem. Some marine pollution problems are local, but many have international implications. It is not only a global but complex problem with interlocking economic, technological, political, and legal aspects. It is time to stop using our oceans as a dumpster. We will continue to push for ocean action. Together we can save our oceans. God bless you all in Mexico in this World Sustainable Forum on Development. And once again, my sincere apologies, regrets for not being able to join you in this vital, very important conference. Thank you. Muchas gracias a todos.
Sorry. Okay, our next and final keynote speaker is His Excellency, Mr. Yukio Hatoyama, the former Prime Minister of Japan. Please welcome him to the podium.
Nuestro último orador, por favor, démosle la gran bienvenida a su gran excelencia, el doctor Yukio Hatoyama, ex primer ministro de Japón. Bienvenido.
To begin, I wish to express my great shock and equal sorrow at last month's untimely passing of the eminent Dr. Rajendra Pachauri. I know we all held him in the highest esteem for his tremendous work over the years. As we mourn this enormous loss, we must also resolve to carry on Dr. Pachauri's incredible legacy in the vital quest to build a truly sustainable world. At last year's United Nations Climate Action Summit in Bangkok, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres went on record with a genuinely memorable comment. Coal addiction must be overcome to ease climate change. Despite the urgent warning, however, in my native country of Japan, the Agency of Natural Resources and Energy insists on following a different path. For example, the agency continues to export high-efficiency coal-fired power above the ultra-supercritical pressure level. As we know, even with ultra-supercritical pressure, the carbon dioxide reduction rate for such coal power remains extremely low. As my opening request, therefore, I demand that Japan immediately halt its exports of coal-fired power generation. Japan does deserve a certain degree of praise, however. At long last, for example, interest has at last grown in climate emergency declarations. Addressing the United Nations back in September of 2009, when I was the Prime Minister of Japan, I announced a plan to reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 25% by the year 2020. However, this pledge turned out to the peak of such effort. Following the Great East Japan earthquake and the tidal waves of March 2011, and the resulting accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, the Japanese government grew highly passive in addressing climate change. More recently, however, local governments have become more enthusiastic about such initiatives. Nevertheless, only a few Japanese cities have issued their own climate emergency declarations. On the brighter side, a National Diet Members League has been formed with that very purpose in mind. Such moves are raising hopes for a sharp increase in the number of cities that choose to issue such declarations from here on. Japan, meanwhile, now accounts for the second largest amounts of plastic waste per person after the United States. One example is plastic checkout bags. The Japanese use 40 billion such bags each year, or about 1 bag per person per day. Japan formerly exported 1.5 million tons of plastic waste each year to China as a resource. China, however, now regulates such practices, with Japan unable to find export destinations for this plastic. It is widely said that 84% of waste plastic is put to effective use. However, around 58% of this total requires use of energy in the combustion treatment process. This leads to the burning of fossil fuels and the generation of carbon dioxide. Obviously, this contributes to global warming. Measured by the amount of plastic waste discarded into the ocean, Japan ranks far below nations like China and Indonesia. By volume, Japan is about 30th worldwide. This is far less than the leader in that category, namely the nations of East and Southeast Asia. Each year, however, 30 to 50,000 tons of waste is recovered from Japan's shores. About 2/3 of this debris is plastic waste. Japan's coastal waters, meanwhile, contain 27 times more microplastics than the international average. Considering these facts, Japan needs to immediately adopt effective countermeasures. Agreed upon at the G20 summit held in Osaka, Japan last June was the Osaka Blue Ocean Vision. This plan seeks to reduce the additional pollution caused by ocean plastic waste to zero by the year 2050. In the second half of my talk, I want to comment on 10 major points, all of which I view as vital keys in the quest for a sustainable world. First, the Japanese government, based on the Paris Agreement, is striving to become a so-called zero-carbon society. The stated goal is to reach that target as early in the latter half of this century. According to Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the year 2050 is the tentative target, ideally to be reached in 2051. However, no mention is made of the exact schedule for such an achievement. In my view, the government should issue a solid pledge for Japan to become a zero-carbon society by the year 2050. Second, for greenhouse gases, the Japanese government goal is a 26% reduction by year 2030. Compared to the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, IPCC, which demands global reduction of greenhouse gases to 1/2 the current level, the Japanese figure is extremely inadequate. We need to establish a far greater reduction target for these gases. Third, as I noted previously, no matter how efficient coal-fired power generation may be, exports and other supplies of this power should be halted at once. Rather, all possible efforts must be channeled into generation focused on solar, wind, biomass, geothermal power, and maybe hydrogen. Fourth, for the marine plastic issue, I am pleased to report that a certain degree of progress is being made in moving toward the Osaka Blue Ocean Vision proposals. For example, international cooperation is being enlisted to achieve the targets. However, I believe that waiting until 2050 to reduce additional pollution to zero is far too slow. The target year for this goal should be boldly moved up to 2030. Fifth, we need to control the generation of plastic waste through promotion of the three R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. And because combustion treatment is accompanied by carbon dioxide emissions, such processing should be reduced to the maximum degree. Sixth, plastic waste should never be exported. All nations must process this debris within their own borders.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Seventh, major cuts are needed in single-use plastic products. The Japanese government is targeting a 25% reduction by 2030. I appeal for a hike in this goal to 50% at the very least by the very same year. Eighth, in Japan, fees will be charged for plastic checkout bags from this July the 1st. This is a positive step toward regulating the use
You
of
have 1 minute
each
remaining.
such bags at stores. Then again, 45 or more nations have totally banned the use of such checkout bags. Compared to that, the Japanese restrictions are far too moderate. Total bans on such checkout bags should be introduced in Japan as well. Ninth, for microplastics, Japan has heavily responsibilities. This is particularly true of fleece jackets and other synthetic chemical clothing. When such items are laundered, large volumes of microplastic fibers are discharged with the water. Mandatory measures are needed to equip washing machines with filters to prevent microfibers from washing away. As my 10th and final point, fields demanding powerful innovation include development of marine biodegradable plastic and materials such as substitutes for plastic. One such breakthrough is so-called highly biodegradable cellulose acetate made from naturally derived environmentally friendly materials. This concludes my address here today. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias, Dr. Hatuyama.
We'd now like to welcome up our very first panelist, Dr. Arturo Garcia, the Director of Pollutants, Substances, Residues, and Biosafety Research from the National Institute of Ecology and Climate Change from Mexico.
Ahora nos encantaría darle la gran bienvenida al Dr. Arturo Gavilán García, director de Contaminantes, Sustancias, Residuos e Investigación de Bioseguridad del Instituto Nacional de Ecología y Cambio Climático de México.
Bueno, buenos días a todos.
Good morning to you all.
Yo voy a dar mi presentación en español.
I'm going to speak Spanish.
Supongo que todos saben, ¿no?
I suppose
¿Dónde
that
está mi país de origen?
you all know what my country of origin is. So, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers. I'd like to thank particularly Ash Pashauri, the government of the state of Durango, and particularly each one of you for being here today. The panelists the great panelists we have for this session. And I'm going to present the vision, looking to have some reflections about chemical pollution and waste on the ocean. As you know, life in the planet was originated in water. And up to date, we keep doing studies and we keep finding new kinds of life. I was speaking about a new species in the depth of the ocean. So this shows us the richness that lies in the ocean and the life that is generated there. It is also very well known that we are made of water, at least for a big percentage of our bodies. So we have a connection with water, with life. So the bigger part of Earth is covered by water, so all actions we make are related to water. So that's why it's so important to be able to keep working, to be able to take care of the oceans and to preserve them. In terms of sustainable development, which is the title for this forum, I think it's very relevant to think that it's relevant to have development, to keep creating new things. However, we should take care and we should respect and have the necessary considerations so that these won't be harmful for the environment, to keep growing in a healthy and responsible way. In terms of chemical substances usage for development, well, they have accompanied human beings for a long time. We had those substances when agriculture was created, so up to date. To be faster on this subject, we have already registered that we have developed up to 60,000 million chemical substances all around the world. So this is a gigantic number. They have had direct appliances in products, in processes, and we use them very closely. We could count even 350,000 chemical substances that are all around us. We have them in our houses, in the fuels, etc. I'd like to say that in terms of chemical substances usages, well, this has generated waste. As we have said it before, the main concern for plastical waste. Plastical waste are estimated to account for 8,000 tons of plastic materials, and it could reach even 12,000 tons. In terms of chemical substances, just in Mexico we have counted more than 10,000 substances used in industrial usage, and they're used in different processes and activities. Just to point some of them, flame retardant, substances to preserve food, etc. In terms of waste, we have an important challenge. Our population generates more than 120,000 tons of waste, and 12.8% corresponds to plastic waste. Just some of them are recycled, but not all of them. So that's why we are at a very important moment where we can establish a turning point to improve the conditions to manage all of these materials. I'd like to continue mentioning that we have an important work with some progress. We already have a diagnosis with a lot of details about our waste generation. We have also identified the possible measures to have a better usage of waste and to assess that waste. We already have a strategy that is focused on eliminating waste, and our aspirational goal is to reach a zero waste goal And we want to have the energy recovery of valuable materials inside waste that could benefit us to create new materials. Currently, in terms of the chemical substances that exist, mercurium is our main concern. So we can find it in the oceans. And this could be released to the environment because of the increase in temperature. So that's why Mexico has 4 very ambitious projects where we will eliminate 50% of the sources in the country. So I would like to invite you all, as Dr. Adrian said, and many other specialists. This is a work that we need to do it all together. It is for our population, and the strength of the youth is very important to be able to have sustainable consumption. If we're always gathering waste from the ocean, but we never stop the generation of waste, we will always be delayed. So it's very important that we all participate in this solution. That's what Dr. Pachauri said in a visit he did to Mexico. We're all part of the solution, so we need to keep working together to be able to achieve this big challenge, which is preserving the environment, sustainable development, keep controlling waste generation, and I'd like to thank you all for this invitation. And I would like to congratulate you for this event that is very successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Garcia.
Muchas gracias, Dr. García.
We'd like to welcome up our next panelist, Dr. Norma Patricia Muñoz Sevilla, the chairperson of the Climate Change Council for the Presidency of the Mexican Republic.
Nos encantaría darle la gran bienvenida a nuestra querida y estimada doctora Norma Patricia Muñoz Sevilla, presidenta del Consejo de Cambio Climático para la Presidencia de la República de México. Bienvenida, doctora.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. Very quickly, I know that it's very difficult to speak about our ocean in just 5 minutes, but I think it's highly important. We've had the summits for climate change for 26 years. We've been having the summits every year, but we haven't solved the problem that humankind is facing. We haven't been capable of creating actions because we've faced the lack of political will. There is no political will to solve those problems. We are so good at making documents. Our country's position has been extraordinary. But when we see we don't have any kind of results, any kind of actions, we are not applying those documents. Our ocean, because it's just one ocean, we don't have many oceans, it's just one ocean, and it's suffering, it's been suffering serious problems. What you see when you go to the coast, to the sea, is a calm and blue deep sea, but you never imagine what is in the depth and all the problems. The problems generated by the greenhouse effect gases. The temperature problem that generates a highly problem in the sea and ocean ecosystems. The problem that is linked to the change in the ocean currents. The change of the wind direction that makes us wonder what we're doing with this planet, what we're doing to solve a problem generated by human beings. That's been there for many years, and that we haven't recognized that we're a part of that problem, and that we need to be a part of the solution. We are not external to that problem. We cannot say, it's my neighbor, it's the other guy, it's the other country. It's the big country that is not signing the agreements, who's going out of the agreements, who's polluting. The issue of pollution is not only plastic. We have 8 big types of plastic that correspond to the big ocean parts. And where does that waste come from? We were speaking about pollution that comes from agriculture and intense agriculture. Okay, does anybody know that 80% of sea pollution comes from the terrestrial part? Everything that we do here at Durango will end up in the Pacific coast. What we do in Mexico City will end up in the Gulf of Mexico. Nobody knows that because nobody is thinking about what we're doing. If you ask me to separate waste, I'll say, what for? Well, so that the sea won't be harmed. We have big things to do. It's so sad to go to the climate summit meetings and to see the insular countries that are desperate because they're going to disappear. And that's a topic that is very close to us because we are highly vulnerable. We're between two big bodies of water, the Atlantic and the Pacific. We are like a sandwich. So when the Hurricane Manuel hit Guerrero and created some disasters, we also had a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. So what happened? We were between those two problems that happened in the coastal zone, with a big amount of people who lost their lives and lost their houses. So Costa Rica, for example, has a municipality that has lost its coastal zone. In the coastal zone, they have lost 4 lives. That means that they lost material, they lost human lives. But in the Sinaloa state, the region where I lived and where I worked on sea sciences, we lost 3 streets in the Wasabi municipality. Those streets just disappeared. The small church that was in the 3rd street is now inside of the sea. We cannot even see that church. So what are we doing with the ocean? So when we lose that control on temperature and emissions, many reefs are going to disappear. And in Mesoamerica, and we're part of it, is Mexicans. Well, we have a reef that has a 40% of damage. We have lost the 40% of the Mesoamerican reef. So we have discovered that there's pollution in water that comes from the hotel zone. And what are we doing? They have some pipes that will throw all of that waste to the sea. So that's why we have to do some programs. And that's why the pop movement is speaking about the ocean. We are working on this topic with Marisa and other young people who are part of this project because we believe that they're the ones who are going to reach those solutions that we should have taken since yesterday. The ocean is not going to bury it anymore. The coastal zones won't bury it anymore. Just check out the problem in Quintana Roo and the Caribbean zone. They are suffering because of the presence of the macroalgae, sargassum, that is provoking a great amount of problems. Quintana Roo has 500,000 tons of sargassum in the coasts because the underground waters are being polluted. And we keep thinking that we're going to have resources to have a project. I'd like to say that we invite you to keep thinking about the oceans, but also the terrestrial part, because we have lost 50% of the Mexican forests and nothing is happening. So we need to keep working on that. We need to give solutions. We need to be global citizens to be able to say, hey, here's my contribution to be able to help in these big problems. Thank you very much.
Our next panelist is Ms. Marisa Lopez, the founder of Bluer Future with an MA in Marine Conservation and Education. Please welcome her to the stage.
And she also happens to be your lovely mother.
And she's my mom.
También démosle la calurosa bienvenida a la señora Marisa López, que es la fundadora de Bluer Future, que es de conservación marina y educación, y quise soltar un secreto, que es también la mamá de Summer. Entonces, démosle la gran bienvenida. Bienvenida, por favor, comienza. El que quieras usar, si deseas usar ese o, sorry, if you want to use this one or the other one.
I'll try this one.
Try that, and if not, welcome to the podium. And remember, 6 minutes, and we'll give you the 1 minute warning.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Very strict. So, thank you, everybody. I just want to say a quick thanks to specifically Dr. Norma and to Ash for encouraging me and Summer and our friends and everybody else, I bet, here to be here. I really appreciate it. Thank you for reaching across borders. Thank you for reaching across oceans and making us feel welcome. I can confidently and firmly say that the light within me has been touched by the light within you. So thank you. Yeah, let's give a little clap to Ash and Dr. Norma. She's not listening. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. We have some amazing scientists and politicians here presenting, and we're talking about a lot of facts and information, which is super important. But I want everyone's attention, and I want to talk a little bit about our relationship with the ocean. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and probably require that you stand up. So first of all, and this, I might have a little personal motive here, but is anyone else here a scuba diver? Does anyone dive like myself in summer? So if you do, stand up, please. Stand up. Don't worry. This is I'm going to have everybody probably stand up. So just go ahead and stand up if you like to dive. I'm going to see who the other divers are in the room. Excellent. Good. I'm glad that there's, quite a few of us. So stay standing. I want you to stand up if you have ever been to the beach. Who has been to the beach? A lot of you. Excellent. So stay standing. And if anyone's not standing, if you like seafood and fish, please also stand up. Okay, so I think we could look around and see that basically everybody in this room has some sort of relationship with the ocean, something we like out of the ocean. So feel free to sit down. Thank you, everybody, for standing. I appreciate it. So you're probably thinking about the beach. You're probably thinking about your favorite fish that you saw on a dive right now, or you're probably thinking about, lobster or whatever you like to eat out of the ocean. When you think about the ocean, so right now I invite you to just kind of connect with yourself. What kind of feelings do you get? How do you feel? Just think within yourself for a minute. How does that thinking about the beach or the ocean or playing in the waves make you feel? So for some of us, that might be a feeling of a fear of sharks. But for most of us, I think it's probably a very positive feeling. I'm just guessing that thinking about the ocean is positive. So thanks for thinking about that. And I think, given that most of us have been to the beach, given that most of us have a relationship with the ocean, I think it's fair to assume that the people in this room probably actually care about the ocean. And we protect the things we care about. We really do. So we all know that the ocean plays a significant role in mitigating climate change. That's a known fact. And yet the threats to the ocean and coastal regions are significant. And Norma and our other panelists did a really fantastic job talking about those threats and why we want to protect the ocean. So what do we do now? As Dr. Patricia Clower said yesterday, we have the gift of desperation. So reframing where we're at, I believe we are in desperate circumstances right now, looking towards the future, and as somebody with a daughter that cares about the future of our world and wants other people to have these really amazing experiences that I've had with the ocean. What do we do now? Well, let's take our desperation and let's use it to create a sense of urgency and make this rapid change that we've been talking about. So who is the best? This is my opinion as a mother of a teenager. Who is the best at making rapid change? I think it's young people, because they are changing so quickly and so rapidly. So I really look to our young people to partner with them on this change. So I really view this relationship as a partnership. And I really commend the World Sustainable Development Forum for actively seeking out youth, for finding the young people here and helping them get here, inviting them to this conversation, putting them on panels, making them active participants in this dialogue. That is amazing. And I think I see that as a huge change. I do not think that was happening 30 years ago. So I have a very exciting announcement. At least I think it's very exciting. I've been talking to Dr. Norma and I've been talking to Ash, and they have agreed that we should start a part of our Protective Planet, so the POP Ocean Initiative, to engage young people, the young people here, and other young people around the world in ocean conservation initiatives through POP. So let's give a round of applause for that idea. We're super excited. It's a really big announcement, and I feel really lucky to be the one to make that announcement. Ash has done an amazing job of creating a platform to empower and educate youth, and really focused on action. What are the actions that young people can take? How can they go from a sense of desperation and a sense of being oppressed, and take that, and how can you create something positive out of that desperate feeling? Well, that it is by taking action. We feel more empowered and in control. So anyway, we're gonna be talking more about Pop Ocean, but if anybody would like to know more about the initiative or be part of creating it or part of forming it, please approach me or Ash or Norma. We'd love to talk to you about it. And we are particularly looking to involve young people from small island nations, as we know that they are getting hit the hardest right now, and not represented. So thank you very much, everybody. Looking forward to talking to you more about this.
Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you.
Bienvenida a el señor Carter Riz de Una Generación Más, One More Generation. And I especially give you a warm welcoming to my lovely colleague, a mi querido colega de Una Generación Más. I came here with him as part of his nonprofit. Yo vine aquí por parte de Carter. Y con su organización sin fines de lucro. Entonces, por favor, te dejamos el escenario. We give you the stage.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's Carter. That's not my best picture. But I will say, this is a little bit about me. I'm passionate about using education as a way to drive change, not only in youth, but around the world for everyone. I've been part of this nonprofit for over 10 years, and I started it when I was 8 years old. You can go to the next slide. So, quick thing I want to say, I met Dr. Pachari when I was 14, and I was actually at a house party, and I told him, hey, what do you know about plastic pollution? And he was intrigued by what I had to say. And at the end of it, he said, I really like what you have to do with, the oceans and the environment. So he gave me his card. And every time he came to Atlanta, my dad and I and my sister would go pick him up from the airport. We'd have conversations, we've had lunch. And it was such a special connection with him. And when I heard the passing of him, it broke my heart. I was in Costa Rica, and I immediately called Ash, and I said, this is one of the saddest moments that has ever happened, and I apologize. But I know that he lives with us today. You can go to the next slide. So some of my skills and expertise over the years of actually, learning by myself. Like I said, I started OMG back in 2009 with my sister. I've been fighting for a better environment for, not just myself, but for future generations. I specialize in teaching about plastic pollution and how it affects our climate. And I'm committed, I know we can't wait for someone else to do the job. I know firsthand that we have to kind of step up and do it ourselves. You can go to the next. So at the beginning of 2009, my aunt came back from South Africa, and she had adopted cheetahs for us. Now, we don't get to keep these cheetahs or anything, but it was just saying that we would pay to take care of them. And I asked my dad, why do cheetahs need to be adopted? And he said if there weren't agencies like the one you're adopting your cheetahs from, there might not be any cheetahs when you have kids. And that got us really upset. And my sister and I said we had to do something. And so we convinced our dad that we were serious about wanting to help save endangered species, and we created an organization called One More Generation, or OMG. Next, in 2010, we heard about the Gulf oil spill. And shortly after that, we came home, we saw pictures of seabirds and sea turtles being pulled out of the water, caked in oil. And we knew we had to do something about it. So we contacted everyone we knew. We went to churches, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, knocked on doors, anybody who'd listen, and we collected supplies for 4 months. And on Olivia's 8th birthday, my sister, we drove 11 and a half hours down to the Gulf, where we delivered to the Marine Mammal Sea Turtle Rescue Center all of these supplies. But while we were down there, we learned about one particular issue, plastic pollution. And we realized that all the oil that's being spilt around the world has no comparison to plastic pollution in the detrimental effects. And so we created our plastic awareness curriculum, where we go into schools and teach kids for a week long about plastic pollution. And lastly, we created youth empowerment. So we got all these different kids around Georgia first to join up with us, and we asked them, what are they passionate about? We didn't want to force something upon them, and we got someone who said they were passionate about gardening. So we helped them start a gardening program where they collected all the food and brought it to homeless people. Next, We've Got You Covered was another organization where we gave blankets that Delta did not want anymore to homeless people during the winter. Shortly after all of this, a few years ago, we were contacted by Delta Airlines. And they had heard about our curriculum called the One Less Straw Pledge program. And so we went in, we met with them, and we took out all of their plastic straws. And they wanted us to experiment with 3,000 people, how it would affect, their day-to-day life. And we found out that by taking out the straws, 99% of the people didn't need the straw, and it took out all of the plastic lids that the people were needing because they didn't need it anymore. So from then on, they said, all right, we're going to test it in all of our other cafeterias. They did. And now Delta no longer uses plastic straws on any flight. Then we partnered with Hilton Hotels. And we got the Waikoloa Village, the first one, which had used 800,000 single-use plastic straws every single year. None of them got recycled. We got them to stop using plastic straws altogether. Then they connected us with the headquarters, and now we have all 650 locations around the world no longer using plastic straws, which ends up reducing 35 million single-use straws from ending up in the landfill every year. So you can go to the next. We also talked with Delta about using cans instead of plastic water bottles. I'll have to go a little bit quicker because I'm running out of time here. We can go to the next one. So we toured Delta's cafeteria, and they asked us to find different problems that, they may not be seeing. And one of them was the six-pack rings that were around every single can. And we realized that they were taking the cans off and putting the six-pack rings in the same bin. I mean, who does that? You're putting plastic with cans. And we finally figured out that it's going to a bigger organization, and they're not separating it either because they have to pay more money to separate it. And Delta has a program where every can that they recycle, they get money back and they give it to Habitat for Humanity. But they're not making as much money, so not as much money is going to them. We had a meeting with Coke just recently about switching from their Dasani water bottles to cans. And what they told us was that they were not going to switch because their plastic bottles were so much better for the environment than cans. And we told them, you're wrong, but they didn't want to listen to us because we were kids, because we were young people. So what we did was we attacked them. We basically said, in order to stay profitable for our shareholders, we need to meet consumer demands. Well, if all of us decided to go 30 days without using a Coke product, we are the consumer. We're going to be the ones demanding them to change. So I think, in conclusion, I know I'm not completely finished, but in conclusion, I think that no matter how small you start, you can affect global change with large corporations. Just stop using a product. Vote with your wallet. You know, you don't have to attack them on major levels. Just kind of do something small, and I promise you, it will be seen on global levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carter.
Muchas gracias, Carter.
Our final panelist for this panel would be Dr. Jose Charcujan, researcher at Emeritus of the National Autonomous University of Mexico.
Y por último, démosle la bienvenida. Qué pena, al doctor José Sarucán, que es el investigador emeritos de la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. Bienvenido.
Gracias. Disculpo el cambio
For the change in the order, but I have a new computer of a company who loves changing all the ways of accessing, USBs, and I just got it. I forgot to bring it, so there was a mess very well handled here as to be able to have this presentation. I'd like to have personally acknowledged and thanked Pachi for this invitation. I will do this now with his family. It's really a shock. I learned today when I got here of his passing away. The talk, even if the title is in English, this is for those who do not understand Spanish, but I'm going to be presenting in Spanish because I have less than 6 minutes now to speak. Well, I cannot speak so fast in English as I can do so in Spanish, so I apologize. This talk should not be in this section as I see it. It should be rather in a different area. Yes, we cover some, the marine ecosystems, but that's not the core of what I'm going to be presenting right now. But what we are doing in Mexico is to handle biodiversity, moving towards sustainability of this country. Next slide, please. Well, this work was made by CONABIO, which is the National Commission for Knowledge and Use of Biodiversity of Mexico, Spanish acronym. This is a governmental entity. And I'm going to show you the two legs on which CONABIO bases on, the first of which is the biological one. And what you see here is not one of those Nintendo games. It's the expression of all of the information that we have about all of the organisms that we know in Mexico, which Andrea referenced, and besides with specific details of which each one of the specimens comes from, when it was collected, who collected it. So that's the biological part. So right now we have 15 million specimens. By mid-year, it's going to be 250 million specimens, which are going to cover all of the country, plus the biogeographical zones with which we interact. Next one. Next one. Can we move to the next one? Thank you. The other leg is, I'm going to call it the spatial geographical leg, on which, where each one of these specimens is located to make the relation to environmental patterns, climate, soil, and other species. This is absolutely essential, otherwise we cannot handle things. CONABIO has today the greatest capacity, perhaps, of geomatic handling of Mexico. Next one. Are you seeing how much they take to change lights? Please, we must subtract this. Now, one of the main issues that we have been doing since 1998 as to reduce damage because of forest loss is the daily report 8 times a day of fires, almost in real time in all of the Mexican federal states and all of the Central American countries right now permanently. If you go on to the cannabis site, you can see them there. Next one, that reduces damage, but also this saves lives, which is also a very important part. Next. The other aspect is monitoring, and in this case, this concerns marine systems, ecosystems, in this case mangroves, and the mangroves are very important because of their capacity of CO2 collection, blue CO2, which is called like this because of the collection of by these systems. It is one of the most important systems. We have monitoring this from the last 15 years permanently, and you can know hectare by hectare how much mangrove remains in this country every year. Next one. We're also doing this with the Central American Reef or Mesoamerican Reef, which is the second largest in the world. We are also working on the problem of bleaching and the loss of a reef. Next one. Next one. No, that was too fast. Come on. Okay, now that's a map that we have just got the best map of Mexico in terms in a 1 to 20,000 precision. Next one. So we can locate areas where we're having deforestation. This is an amazing tool for ProFEBA, which is the Attorney General for the Environment, to know exactly who and where forests were deforested, in a specific area. This is very precise, and this is being renewed every year. So we're having very highly updated maps. Next one. And finally, the most important part is that potentially we have finished with the conflict between agriculture and preservation because now we have a law that demands that all of agricultural subsidies are entered into this system that we created as to see whether the parcel of the person who asked this for the subsidy is in a defined area in an area defined as a priority for preservation. If that's the case, they cannot get the subsidy, or they can have subsidies of a different nature. So this is the end, and that's the most important tool that we have today as to achieve the zero deforestation goal of this country for the end of this decade. Now, that's the handling of biological biodiversity as to, on the one hand, manage to reduce the greenhouse gas that create climate change, and on the other hand, also the preservation, which is also a vital element for life on this planet for the different ecosystems. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
About that. Okay, one more round of applause for all the panelists and the keynote speakers.
Por favor, les damos a todos una última ronda de aplausos para todos los oradores y todos los panelistas. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos. Thank you for being with us. Ahora vamos a proceder.
So we're going to continue. We have made a few changes to the schedule.
Hemos hecho unos cambios a la agenda de hoy.
We will be having one more panel before lunch.
Vamos a tener un panel, otro panel más antes del almuerzo.
And then we'll be having an hour for lunch.
Y después vamos a tener alrededor de una hora para el almuerzo.
Also, we want to remind you about the expeditions that are over here to your left.
También les queremos recordar que a su mano izquierda se van a encontrar detrás de ese muro de color como, bueno, no sé, color tierra, cafecito, kind of that darkish brown.
And actions.
Y por el último panel se llama las iniciativas subnacionales y acciones.
Former Governor of California, Honorable Arnold Schwarzenegger, has been responsible for focusing on initiatives at the subnational level.
El exgobernador de California y el honorable Arnold Schwarzenegger ha sido responsable de enfocarse en las iniciativas a nivel subnacional, en cuáles entidades ha sido responsable de centrarse a través de todo el mundo y tomar acción en un nivel subnacional.
In the case of the US, for instance, while federal policies have moved backwards,
en el caso de los Estados Unidos, por ejemplo, mientras las políticas federales han retrocedido,
fortunately, at the level of the states and cities, there are encouraging signs of action on climate change.
Afortunadamente, a nivel en los estados y ciudades hay signos alentadores de acción sobre el cambio climático.
What is it that leaders at the subnational level can do?
¿Qué pueden hacer los líderes a nivel subnacional?
These will be identified which time-based initiatives and concrete goals.
Estos serían identificados con iniciativas basadas en el tiempo y objetivos concretos.
So our moderator for today is Mr. Mila Seeley, the former regional chairperson of the Caribbean Youth Environmental Network, CYEN. If we can invite her to the stage. There we
Para
go. Round
hoy,
of applause.
démosle la gran bienvenida a la señorita Jamilla Slay, que es la ex regional chairperson del Comité Joven del Network Ambiental del Caribe. Un gran placer tenerte. Bienvenida.
And our keynote, go ahead. And we have two keynotes.
Y tenemos dos oradores.
Our first is Dr. Jose Rosas Aispuro Torres, the constitutional governor of Durango.
Y tenemos dos oradores y el primero es el doctor José Rosas Aispuro Torres, que es el gobernador constitucional de Durango. Pero creo que desafortunadamente en estos momentos él no nos va a poder asistir con su gran presencia.
Unfortunately,
Entonces,
he will not be able to make it right now.
thank you.
And then the Honorable Arnold Schwarzenegger, the former governor of California, will be submitting a video.
Y desafortunadamente no va a estar el gran Terminator. We cannot have the great Terminator here with us today, pero sí lo tenemos en un video. We do have him on video, correct?
Yes.
Are we going to play the video?
Before we play the video, I'd like to welcome up the panelists.
Exactamente. So, antes de poner el gran video de Arnold Schwarzenegger, vamos a darle la gran bienvenida a nuestros panelistas.
First, I want to welcome up Omar Ramirez Tejada, the Environmental Advisor of the Executive Power of the Coordinator of the CDEE Renewable Program from the Dominican Republic.
Y primero le queremos dar la bienvenida al maestro Omar Ramírez Tejada, que es que es de la parte ambiental del Poder Ejecutivo y coordinador de la CDEE, del Programa Renovable de la República Dominicana. Muy buenos días, tardes y bienvenido, caballero.
Next, please welcome up His Excellency, Mr. Alfredo Dueng, Minister of Natural Resources and Environment.
Y ahora le damos la bienvenida a su excelencia, el señor Alfredo Herrera Dueng, del Ministerio Natural de Recursos Naturales y de Ambiente. Por favor, secretario, bienvenido.
Okay. And finally, I'd like to welcome up Miss Lauren Sandberg, the co-founder of Eco Eaters from Tall Expedition Academy and also POP USA.
Y ahora démosle una gran bienvenida a nuestra querida Lauren Sandberg, que es la co-founder de Eco Eaters, de Tahoe Expedition Academy, que también es parte de POP y viene de Estados Unidos. Por favor, démosle un gran aplauso.
Now, if we could play the Honorable Arnold Schwarzenegger, former governor of California's video, please.
Y ahora vamos a poner el gran video de Arnold Schwarzenegger, que es nuestro orador, el gran Terminator. Damos toda la parte del video. So if you would like to go ahead, I don't know how you have your, are they coming up or are you going to be coming up? Okay, lovely. Entonces se van a, entonces aquí te dejamos. And again, just as a reminder, every person has 6 minutes. Lovely ladies up here will be giving you a time and we'll try to give you a 1-minute reminder. Exactamente, 6 minutos. Chicas, acá al frente les dan el recordatorio y les damos la de 1 minuto. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jamila Sili and I'm from Barbados, a small island in the Caribbean. Just a few minutes ago, I thought that I was the only Caribbean person here, but now we have former minister from Dominican Republic. So in my country, we are only 166 square miles in size, and with around 290 people. We are one of the most densely populated places in the Western Hemisphere, and we're also very water scarce.
I'm very grateful to address you as the moderator for this session. And in regards to climate change, my island has been making lots of efforts to prepare for climate change impacts, like building seawalls, which are also disguised as boardwalks. We're doing a tree planting initiative this year. We're trying to plant 1 million trees. And we're also raising awareness about climate change through the efforts of the Caribbean Youth Environment Network, which is the CYEN. The CYEN is the oldest and largest youth-led environmental initiative, our network, and we have about 20 countries in the Caribbean. And this is not only the English-speaking Caribbean, but we also have Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic as well, and also Haiti. In Barbados as well, we are leaders in capturing solar energy for water heaters and also for electricity. So as long as I've been around, that is 31 years, we have always had solar water heaters. So that's what I've known forever in my lifetime. All right, and in terms of climate change as well, other islands are doing many efforts, along with tree planting. In Grenada, they're doing coral restoration. They're actually going into the water and planting coral so that we can build our reefs, because that's very important for us, as I mentioned yesterday. And, and again, more efforts. Now I would actually like to call up our first panelist, which is His Excellency, thank you, Mr. Alfredo Herrera Duenweg, who is the Minister of Natural Resources and Environment. Please welcome His Excellency.
Muchas gracias a todos. La verdad nos sentimos muy honrados con la presencia de todos y cada uno de ustedes y con la presencia de tantas personalidades tan importantes y distinguidas que están el día de hoy reunidos en el segundo Foro Mundial de Desarrollo Sostenible. El día de hoy me toca platicar con ustedes y poder comentarles que Durango está listo para los retos que vienen. El gobierno del estado de Durango, que encabeza el gobernador, el doctor José Rosas Aispuro Torres, está haciendo su parte. Y me gustaría platicarle algunos datos interesantes
And I'd like
que
to share with
tenemos.
you some interesting data that we have currently in the state. The state of Durango is powered to produce solar energy. Right now, we have installed some plants that are generating a certain amount of megawatts of solar power. Durango has a solar radiation that is very high, but it doesn't have a very high temperature. This means that Durango has a specific potential to produce solar power. We are looking for the way so that Durango will be the first national power producing solar energy. Right now we have foreign companies, Spanish and Chinese companies that are working with solar plants. I'd like to say that we're working in different schemes to be able to make this state, the state of Durango, a greener and cleaner state. We have the federal policies, the national policies, where we do reforestations every year. But the government of the state of Durango, and its particular responsibility, is promoting to generate urban reforestations and commercial reforestations for the production of trees that could be used for wood, as well as trees that won't be used for wood. For example, agave. that enables the production of a very tasty drink that is produced in the locality, which is called mezcal. In the Ministry for Natural Resources, we are producing millions of plants of this kind of agave to be able to work with the communities, to be able to work with the people who are in charge of this duty regarding reforestations. Right now, agave is being used with the Sylvester agave. The idea is to avoid the extermination of the wild agave to be able to have a sustainable use of this product. I'd like to tell you also that we have some studies that say that 1 hectare of this kind of cacti, the agave, is capable of producing 30% more of oxygen than 1 hectare of pine forest. We have one of the main forest reserves here in Durango at the national level. We have an inventory of the 5% of the pine wood that is available in the country. I'd like to tell you that we also have a big amount of hectares of protected natural reserves. We have some natural areas that are federal reserves and state protected areas. We have also the Fernandez Canyon Reserve, which has 17,000 hectares. It is also an important site because it has an international importance. We also have a different zone, which is the Ramsar site with the lagoon, and we also have the state park, the Tecuanco, with almost 900 hectares of natural protected areas. We are committed in Durango to protect the environment, and there is a strong commitment from the governor. So that's why he agreed for us to do the second Sustainable Development Forum that we have achieved to do, and we're so glad that you are here today. In that sense, I'd like to tell you that we are working jointly with the municipalities and the mayors to do the urban reforestations. We are developing within the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment of the state of Durango approximately 150,000 fruit trees that will enable us to have the reforestation campaigns that will generate environment services, but that the people who live in these communities have expressed that they are interested in taking care of a normal tree or a fruit tree. So we have that commitment to have irrigation for those trees. But these kind of trees can generate environment services as well as fruit that they can take advantage of and eat. So that's how we're looking to do urban reforestations to be able to fight climate change. On the other side, in the state of Durango, we have a capacity to produce approximately 29 million of plants, like pines or conifers or other kind of trees in the state.
You have 1 minute.
We were also speaking with the neighbor governments at the state level to be able to create strategies that will help us to work jointly for our environment. I'd like to thank you all for your presence, and I'd like to repeat that the government of Durango has a commitment with you. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I am very happy to hear of all of the work and efforts that Durango is doing towards environmental protection. And now, the youth will lead us. There can be no sustainable development without including youth. So please help me to welcome Ms. Lauren Sandberg.
Thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. It is an honor to be speaking here. As mentioned, my name is Lauren Sandberg. I live in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, on the west coast of the U.S. My home is one of many places to be directly impacted by global warming. Our economy and livelihoods are dependent upon the outdoor, and specifically the ski industry. During the winter, many tourists visit Lake Tahoe so that they can enjoy the ski areas. This brings in money for many local businesses, including restaurants, hotels, and shops, thus providing many jobs for the people that live there. But each year, the ski season has been getting shorter. Our winters have had less snow. The average number of days in a year on which the average air temperature remains below freezing has dropped by 27 days since 1910. This means that snow is turning to rain, and gradually, the amount of days that we can ski is lessening. Imagine what it will be like in 10 years from now, in 50 years. And since our economy and our lives are dependent upon the ski season, as global warming progresses even farther, my home is going to need to find a new source of income. That's not going to be easy. And furthermore, my home is just one of many, many places across the globe to be so negatively affected by global warming. As a part of the youth, I know that we will pay the biggest price if we don't act promptly. At the world's current rate of warming, as I grow up, I'm going to have to face all of the climate change-caused disasters and conflicts that so many scientists have predicted. My children and their children and all of the future generations are going to be living in a world that we might not even recognize. If we don't take action now, we might not ever be able to restore our Earth to a state where it can sustain itself. We can change this path for our future, but in order to do so, we have to take immediate action. In my hometown, I'm trying to raise awareness and fight climate change. In my school's Eco Club, I'm working to join our school to a group called Schools for Climate Action, which is an organization of schools that have acknowledged the severe effects of global warming and have called on both local and national governments to take action. Outside of school, with my sister and a friend, I'm working on a project called Eco Eaters, which helps restaurants reduce their single-use plastic. I've spoken at a town meeting about supporting a carbon tax. But even all of this is not enough. Even if everybody did this, it still probably wouldn't be enough. So we need political action. And this political action needs to come from the bottom up. Even though each individual can't make a huge change, if people believe in something and want it, there will be change. Individuals are directly impacted by business owners and town leaders, and these business owners and local governments are always directly impacted by subnational actions. Thus, a cyclic movement is in place. If a state or subnational initiative takes action, resistant people are essentially forced to take action. On the other hand, national action may be too far removed, and people aren't necessarily directly impacted, so they aren't forced to change. So while we do need national actions to encourage everybody to do something in general, subnational actions promoted or supported by the people are very important, possibly even more important, because they can really impact all individuals and can make actual change. The more local an initiative is, the more effect it will have on the people that it targets. As is the case of the US, subnational actions are very important when there are no national solutions happening. Since our federal government isn't taking the steps we need to reduce emissions, individual states are stepping up to take the responsibility themselves. Furthermore, while subnational initiatives can often take the place of national policies and laws, subnational actions can be critical to achieving those national objectives. The subnational initiatives are acting as proving grounds for policies and technologies. They are the early adopters, so that when we do get around to enacting national policies, we have the technology that works and scales and proven policies to build upon. For example, during the day, California runs on much renewable energy, but they are still working on finding a way to have renewable energy when there is no daylight. They need more research funding to solve the problem of storing energy to be used at night. If California, as a subnational initiative, was given this funding, they could find a good solution that could then be used on a larger scale for other states. Subnational initiatives and actions also simply provide real emission reductions. Even though they don't provide the amount of emission reductions that we need, they still save some greenhouse gas, and every ton not emitted buys us a little bit more time to figure out the national solutions. Every step in the right direction is a step we should be taking. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lauren, for showing us what you and your organization have been doing. I am highly impressed that very young people are interested in helping us to survive climate change. local actions can help global change, especially in a country where some leaders do not take climate change seriously. I personally believe that climate change should be taught in schools, especially in developing countries where they will be the most impacted. So now we will have our final panelists for the day, or for this session, fellow islander and former minister Omar Ramirez Tejeda.
Muy buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Le acaba de decir a mi compañera de
I just said
caribeño a caribeña.
from a Caribbean to a Caribbean. Thank you very much for that introduction. It's my turn to speak about how the subnational governments can get involved in this world movement at the UN framework on climate change. Now, since I only have 6 minutes, I don't have my slides today. But I'm going to say two very important things. The first objective of every presentation is to educate. And there is something that, how is it possible that the subnational states can overcome the national states in terms of actions? That's very important because the international law, the environmental international law, calls the states after Second World War to respect the parties' framework and decide about climate change. Obviously, every state will have different layers of decision-making at the national level and the so-called negotiation process. That methodological working focus is called top-down. It is a focus that will go from the multilateral part to the national part and will go to the subnational part and the municipal part, which is the last purpose, the basic planning for the community in every state. Some states will go beyond it. They will go to the minimum units for planning. But the majority of the Caribbean and Latin American states have the base community, which is a municipality. Just like our colleague from Durango has explained it. The state of Durango is involved because we have the state level and the municipalities level and the federal level will do the guideline for the policies. So it's very important how young people can be involved in that process. I think that most of you here are young and you want to know how to be part of that process. And you can be part of the process in those three levels, at the national level, the state level, and the municipality level. Some countries, as our colleague from the US has said, she represents California, which is extremely rich within the 52 North American states. If we counted the economy of California, this would account for the 7% of the world economy. It is not fair that they are doing so much for climate change, but the national policies are not promoting this. So, the Paris agreements will break the paradigm established by the Framework Convention of the UN and the Kyoto Protocol, that everything had to come from top to down. That has ended, and that's the result of the youth movement. That as a consequence, using the Paris Agreement has established a different focus. Now we have the methodological guide that will go from down to top, and this will enable the participation at all levels for the social groups, and especially for the young people as you are, because you have the wish and the will and the determination to work for your own destiny, which is the final goal of every human being. So that's why it's so important. to participate through an organization. So I'm a young person, I have my youth accumulated, but since I'm working in a group, in an environmental movement, and the institution that participates at the municipal or state or federal level. As long as it is a proposal and as long as we can contribute to the public policies within that country or that nation. I think that's the best way to participate, and especially to review the Paris agreements, to review the focus from bottom to the top, and please get involved in that process to make decisions, to face the big 21st century challenge, which is climate change. Thank you very much.
Would you like to speak one last time?
Thank you, former Minister Tejeda, for speaking about the top-down management of governance and also the Paris Agreement. And related to the Paris Agreement, I don't know if anyone has heard about 1.5 to stay alive, but that came from the Caribbean Youth Environment Network. So youth got together and we actually got support from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, and they're the ones that pushed 1.5 to stay alive in Paris. And to see that it was actually included into the Paris Agreement, something that us young people in the Caribbean started, to see it become such a large movement. I'm very happy to see that governments have taken it very seriously. And I would like to thank all of the panelists and now turn over to our MCs.
Thank you so much, Damila, for being the moderator of this panel. And to all the other panelists, one more applause, please.
Muchísimas gracias a nuestra moderadora y a todos nuestros panelistas. Por favor, démosles una última ronda de aplausos. Muchísimas gracias. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Thank you for being with us.
So now we will be breaking for lunch. Like Summer said, there was a slight change in the agenda, so we're now going to break for lunch.
En estos momentos vamos a parar y salir para el almuerzo. Como les contamos, hubo un cambio en la agenda.
Lunch will be until 3, so please be back before then at some point.
El almuerzo va a ser hasta las 3 de la tarde. Entonces, por favor, estemos aquí de vuelta puntual. En estos momentos son las 12:35. It is 12:35, correct?
Yes, 12:35.
So please be here by 3. We ask that you take that time to come back. 3 de la tarde, 3 p.m.
We will start.
We are breaking a little early, so lunch will be ready in a little bit.
Sé que los estamos terminando en este momento el programa un poco temprano, entonces por favor permitan que el almuerzo se prepare, y la razón por la cual se está dando este tiempo, the reason why we are giving this break, is not just for you to head out, no es para que solo se vayan, sino el propósito, the purpose, is for you to network, to meet people, para que conozcan gente. Take a moment to look for someone that you maybe haven't met, that you haven't introduced yourself to. Tómense un momento de conocer a alguien que no haya visto. Entonces, es esto, es un tiempo, it's like a lunch and network. Es como un tipo de almuerzo y de networking, y también, por favor, tómense este tiempo, take this time to please visit our 20 exhibition areas that we have behind this lovely wall and this beautiful mural that we have right there that says Second World Sustainable Development Forum. Lo que dice ahí, Segundo Foro.